Hello, everybody, and welcome to another adventure in history. I'm your host, and your boy is tired. um, I woke up about 15 minutes ago from a nap because it's just one of those days. What's up, everybody? Matt, the stuff is in your backyard. It's not in my backyard, but it's backyard adjacent. LC 2500, what up? Tuna, how's it going? Lumpy, welcome, welcome. I'm Spartacus. Kyle is Spartacus. Thank you so much, Kyle, for continuing to be Spartacus. One of the OG first subscribers to my channel, Kyle Wright. Much appreciated, my friend. And I hope that the world is doing right by you. Tuna woke up about 5 minutes ago. I'm going to pretend like you knew that I was streaming and you set yourself an alarm so that you could wake up to see me stream on time. And even if that's not the case, I'm going to pretend that it's the case. How is everybody? So much adventure, so much history. Yeah, 46 months, Kyle. That's almost 4 years, man. That's crazy. We are coming up on 4 years of streaming, though. I don't know, man. That's shocking to me. I think back to the deepest part of COVID lockdown, and I was like, I'm going out of my mind. I gotta do something. And 4 years later, here we are, 158 mainline episodes and almost 100 viewer requests in, right? It's kind of crazy. It's just, it's befuddling. And I appreciate all of you. It would not have happened if it weren't for you. If it was just me streaming/screaming out into the void, I would not continue to do this, right? Oh, you live right near Cahokia. Excellent. I've been there a couple of times. I need to go explore more. Every time that I've gone, I've been with groups of students, and I have had limited ability to enjoy it at my own pace. When you've got students, you're constantly wrangling, right? And I don't begrudge that. I appreciate taking students to cool sites and hanging out with them, but it's nice to be able to move through things at your own pace. What up, KP? How's it going? Hope you're doing well. I guess I should give a little bit of an explanation about why we're doing North America tonight. Because the last thing that we did was European, and if we followed sort of the established procedure of events, that means we should be doing a stream on Africa tonight. And I had actually started to collect some notes for a stream on Africa. And what I realized is it would probably be more appropriate if I waited one cycle to talk about the emerging African kingdoms. Because if we were to talk about the kingdom of like Ife or the kingdom of Benin, I would basically be able to say at some point during the 1000s-ish, this kingdom showed up, and then we really don't know very much about them. Let's move on. Because a lot of those African kingdoms don't really sort of get to their height or get fully established until the very, very late 1200s or the early 1300s. And that was just a little bit outside of the timeline scope that I'm trying to keep for this cycle. So if you are a fan of African history, never fear, it is not something that we are going to skip overall. I just felt like it was a bit more coherent for us to cover them more fully so we could establish them and show cool pictures and talk about them sort of in an arc instead of kind of cutting them off in the middle, if that makes any sense. So that's the plan for next go round. So that leads us to North America. And if we are sort of, again, looking at this period of time from the 1100 to 1200s and looking at things like trends and groups that are becoming dominant and looking at themes, we're going to run into two fairly sizable Native American cultural complexes in North America here. And these are going to be two of the largest ones that had ever been existent in what we might call the United States part of North America. Now, obviously, if we're, discussing history, all of this really cool Mesoamerican stuff had been going on for more than 1,000 years by this point. And of course, the cities in Mesoamerica were enormous by comparison. Their levels of technology and civilization were far advanced from a lot of the stuff that's happening in North America. And we're not taking anything away from Mesoamerica tonight. We're just going to take a little bit of time to sort of look at North America and celebrate them for what they were in sort of their own context. And I think that's something that gets looked over a lot when we talk about history, especially history of the Americas. If we're in a World Civ class, it's pretty frequent to talk about Maya, Aztec, Inca, Spain, right? And that's sort of all you get, right? Like, there were people living in North America. They migrated in somewhere around 22 to 25,000 years ago. And then Spain, right? A lot of American history is taught through the lens of it mattering to European people. And that just doesn't sit well with me. So I like talking about these people on their own right and in their own aspect. So that's what we're going to do tonight for the Mississippian culture and the Pueblo III period that's happening out in the Southwest. So, the Mississippian culture. What's up with that? Well, we have talked about this a little bit the last time we were doing North American streaming. We mentioned the rise of the Mississippian culture coming out of the late Woodlands period. Woodlands period was a little bit of a period of decentralization across the eastern part of North America, where cities kind of disappeared and populations were growing, but not in a sort of concentrated way. A lot of people were going a little bit more back towards semi-nomadism and away from sedentary agriculture. Now, agriculture didn't disappear, and neither did centers of habitation, but for a long period of time in the 700s, 800s, 900s, you're not going to see as much city dwelling in North America, the continental United States part of North America. You're going to see a lot more smaller villages and smaller groups of people moving back and forth between regions. So when we get to around the year 1000, and then especially by the time we get to the year 1100, we are going to witness a big population boom. And this is mostly going to be based around the river systems of North America. And we talk about how big some of these river systems are. Mississippi does have culture, but this is referring to the river, not necessarily the state. So the father of waters, exactly. And that's actually one thing I want to talk about. When we talk about the Mississippi River Basin, a lot of people know sort of where the Mississippi River is, but they don't really understand exactly how much land drains into the Mississippi River. This is an enormous chunk of the continent. And you can see here highlighted what we call the Mississippi watershed. And this goes all the way up into Canada. It goes all the way over to the Appalachian Mountains, all the way over to the Rocky Mountains. It's a lot of land. It's an enormous amount of territory, right? This is just thousands and thousands and thousands and even millions of square miles or square kilometers, either way you go. And all of these big rivers are basically going to become highways. And it's helpful for us to think about this in that sort of way because this is connecting people. We are going to start moving around these rivers in a way that makes us more connected, sort of like the highway system in the United States does today. Yes, this hydrocannabinoid points out this is exactly correct. This is the land that is claimed when Spain shows up in North America, and Hernando de Soto claims everything that touches the Mississippi River. Now, specifically, the Louisiana Purchase is only going to be this side of the river. All of this material had stopped being Spanish territory quite a bit earlier and had reverted to the French, and the French are then going to be the ones that sell all of this to the United States. So originally this gets claimed by Spain, and then it gets transferred to French control because basically France and Spain couldn't decide on who was going to hold on to territory in the New World because they were fighting so much in Europe. But that's the way that a lot of this stuff went. Of course, this is later on in the 1600s. But anyway, this is a lot of the territory that would go on to be the Louisiana Purchase. Absolutely. An I for all the tributaries on the left, and an S for all of it on the right. Huh. Well, I mean, red blows that up, and then so does Tennessee. But I get it. It's an interesting approach. I get it. I get it. Also, welcome, Viper. How's it going? And hey, hydrocannabinoid. I read your quote and they didn't say hello. Anyway, it's a big chunk of territory. So we're talking about this huge tracts of land, right? And all of these people are going to start moving around on these rivers, and they're going to start trading. And the trade is going to facilitate the need for places to trade, right? I don't want to have to float down a river and then traipse 150 miles into the woods to trade with somebody. I want to float down the river and pull into a dock and get right off my boat and trade with somebody, and then get right back on my boat and go on my merry way. But what this means is the riverside of these big river systems are going to start producing villages that are then going to turn into cities that are then, in certain cases, going to turn into what we would call today metropolitan areas. And this is going to really sort of drive home this idea that the Mississippi is the father of water. So the name Mississippi is Native American, and it means father of waters, right? So this is the biggest river where everything shows up and everybody goes to. And this system is really big and really, really expansive. The draw of this trade network is going to reintroduce luxury items, things that come from a long way away, things that are not native to your particular area. But even beyond that, some of this trade is going to even facilitate sort of day-to-day items, daily use items, not just luxury items. But we're also going to then have to reintroduce a sedentary lifestyle because, again, during the previous period, a lot of that had decentralized. So if we're going to be on the sides of the rivers and we're going to be running these trade cities and trading hubs, we're going to have people that are doing that as a full-time job, which means that they're not going to be hunting or gathering. We're going to need farmers that are going to be capable of growing food in a surplus. So we're going to see maize, which is corn, increase, and we're going to start seeing much more land being reclaimed for agricultural purposes. So this is going to be essential because we've got to have a lot of people that are not going to be farmers. We've got to have people that are going to work all day making pottery because we're going to be trading pottery. We're going to have people working in mines. We're going to have people that are doing jobs that had previously not been even in the thought of a Native American, right? That's why Missouri has towns like pronounced Bodark. Oh, good gravy. Bodark? Good gracious, Missouri. What are we doing? This is why we pronounce Missouri misery, right? Anyway. Bodark. Good gracious. This is just too much. I'm willing to go to a certain extent, but that's too far. So we're going to start trading more, and we're going to have big cities, and we're going to have places that are going to start getting a lot of attention. And one of those places that gets a lot of attention, and this is something that Matt has already brought up, is this place called Cahokia. And Cahokia is in modern-day Illinois. It's right across the road, the river, rather. See, I'm even calling the river a road. It's right across the river from St. Louis, but it's at the confluence of three of these big river systems. It's on the Mississippi River, it's on the Illinois River, and it's right there by the Missouri River. So where three of these big rivers come together, we get this one city that is going to become one of the biggest cities in the world, not just in North America, in the world. I mean, everyone in America pronounces La Croix. I say La Croix. LaCroix is actually the company's preferred pronunciation, and you can check their website for that. That's how they want you to say the name of their beverage. If that makes your ears burn, I understand, but that's actually how they want people to say it. I know. It doesn't make sense, but this is America, right? Now, Cahokia has a lot of stuff going for it. The confluence of the rivers is great. The abundance of arable land is another big plus. This region is very fertile. It has a lot of available farmland, but it's also going to have something that's pretty neat. It's not too far away from a particular region called Mill Creek. Mill Creek is a little bit to the south and a little bit to the east of Cahokia, but it's close enough that Mill Creek mines are going to be a big deal for trade at Cahokia. And one of the things that they're trading is this particular mineral / rock called chert. And you're like, okay, what's up with chert? Well, let me show you. We have here a picture. This is a great dispersal map where we can track the distance that some of these chert points that we can trace back to Mill Creek were excavated. And this goes over this gigantic region, right? So this is up into what is modern day Michigan and Wisconsin, all the way down into what would be today Louisiana, all the way over here into what would be somewhere like Pennsylvania, right? Over here into what is Oklahoma. Because again, we're moving on these river systems, and you can see here that it's sort of concentrated around these particular rivers, or the Missouri River. Cahokia sits right about here. Well, actually, I guess this would be it right here. And Mill Creek is sort of like right about here. I guess that would be it on top of the red. But you can see how far the dispersal of this chert gets. And if we can track it this far, it's fairly safe for us as archaeologists to assume that it was at least a little bit bigger than that. Because if we find examples of this stuff, it's probably not necessarily going to be much of a fluke. Now, there's occasional situations like maybe this guy way up here in Michigan, right? That might have just been a fluke. It just gets passed down through the groups. But these are, again, not necessarily... these are not going to be luxury items. These are everyday use sort of items. And because of that, this isn't something that people are going to want to hold on to as a keepsake. The reason that they liked using this particular mineral for tools is its durability. So that you could work it and make it, the shape that you wanted, but it would also sort of hold that position for a long time. And because these are everyday use items, it's not like somebody's going to want to be buried with their favorite oval-shaped hoe, right? Nobody's going to want to trade for a utility item and then sort of keep it under their pillow at night and take it out and look at it and go, one day I'll be rich. Because this is like, if you went to a convenience store and you bought a Swiffer duster stick, right? That's what we're talking about here. We're not talking about something fancy. We're just talking about an everyday use item that's very mundane. So if we're seeing things spread out this way, it's fair to assume that these were being used, and because of that, people weren't trading them around and moving them further out as a pretty cool luxury item. It was just people moving them around because they were moving them to where they needed to be used. So, again, basically the point of this is to show you how widely the trade network extended, just particularly for this particular type of item, but also to explain how it was probably even a bit more significant than that. Now, Cahokia itself is a pretty fascinating location. It is a fairly marvelous example of civic engineering. If you went to the site and found it during its height, the big main thoroughfares would be organized north, south, east, west, aligned with the cardinal directions. There was a significant amount of land engineering. They cleared a big portion of land in multiple places to make squares and actually leveled out the ground. And you can tell this by looking at the soil composition under the surface level. And you can tell where there used to be hills, but they sort of leveled the top of the hill out and went in and smoothed everything out to make this big flat square. Which is kind of crazy to think about. A lot of people think when we discuss Native American earthwork, a lot of people think about the mounds, and we're definitely going to look at one of those in just a bit. But we don't talk a lot about the civic engineering sort of stuff where we're, leveling things out to make sure that we have drainage. We're leveling things out to make sure that we can meet together and play games on these big fields that we're making and stuff like that. So all that with the... yeah, exactly. So I do want to take just a second to... And that's the wrong screen. To show you Cahokia itself. So if we go over here to Google Earth and we go to Cahokia. What's up, JMR? This is a really big site, and you can go there today if you want to. These are my pins. Where are my pins? I want to hide these. Well, I guess we can just kill that. That's not right. Yeah, it is. Okay, here we go. So all of this region right here, pretty much this whole big square area is where Cahokia used to sit. About my most favorite topic ever, Native American mounds. I mean, yeah, we're going to talk about that. I mean, I'll show you some if you really want to. This guy right here is the largest Native American mound in the continental United States. It's called Monk's Mound. And if you measure the base of it, it has the same base measurement as the Great Pyramid of Giza. It's absolutely enormous. But at this location itself, there were, at one time, about 120 different mounds. And there are remains of that many, but about 70 of them are left. And you can still see several of them. Like here's a big square-topped one. Here's a conical one. There are some that are right here. They're just sort of lower. Big ones over here. One right here. But this location itself was absolutely enormous. And if we're talking about what it looks like here, the population in this area at its height, which was right around the mid 1200s mark, was about 40,000 people living in this particular zone, either inside of the palisade. So there's a big wall that went all the way around all the way around the city, or in the sort of larger metropolitan area, because there were smaller villages and cities outside of it. And if we look contemporaneously at cities of 40,000 people, we're talking about as many people as London and as many people as Paris at the same time. North America, the continental United States part of North America, didn't have a city that reached the population of Cahokia until the 1780s, when Philadelphia passed 40,000 people. And this is a city that was basically going to run from about 1100 to about 1350. So this is hundreds of years before the European settlers would ever be able to match something like this. Was that where I rolled off into the ground? No, that was at another place that I'll show you in just a second. But I do want to show you some pictures, because I have been to Cahokia, and that means that it's time for the adventure hat. Bum-ba-da-bum. So this is the hat that I wear when I go on adventures, because I sunburn too easily. And when I show pictures of places that I have been, I get to wear the adventure hat. So this is Monk's Mound from the side. And I like showing this picture right here because these are, full-size trees. And here's the mound in the background. And if we look... If we look over here in the corner, this is a board that discusses Monk's Mound, and it's about as tall as a person, right? So if we're comparing the size of this giant earthwork to basically a person, it's absolutely enormous. This is built over the span of several hundred years. It's in multiple different phases, and again, this is all built by hand. People putting dirt into baskets and moving the dirt to this location and then piling it up and then packing it down. It's just crazy. Across the road here, looking out, you can see other very, very large flat-topped mounds. You can see how many of them are. There's one right here, there's one right there, there's another one back there, there's one right here. Pretty sure it was aliens. How many alligator tails is that? That's a great question. I'm not sure what the standard length of an alligator tail is. But Cahokia is huge. Now, another thing, how silly of them, they should have used a wheelbarrow. Yeah, you would think so. Another thing about Cahokia that's pretty neat is this stuff. This is a copper effigy of a warrior dressed up in falcon garb. And Cahokia is going to have a copper foundry. And to our current knowledge, this was one of the only copper foundries in the continental United States at the time. And it might be the only one, period. There are a couple of others that people suspect. But metalwork in this region had a little bit of a history that goes back, fairly far, but it's very sporadic and it's not particularly what we would call contiguous. You don't see a contiguous tradition of people doing metalwork. But you see stuff like this coming out of Cahokia, which is very detailed craftswork. It's got a lot of very clearly defined proportional images here. You can see this in relief. So obviously they had understanding of things like height and shadow and depth, which is very advanced. If you compare this piece of art here made out of copper to something contiguously being created in medieval Europe, this is better than a lot of medieval European art at the same time. We're still doing Renaissance flat stuff where we draw babies like small humans in Europe at the time. And of course, the fact that this is made out of copper is yet another level up. So there's a particular mound, I believe it's Mound 34. I'm not 100% certain, so don't quote me on that, but I believe it's Mound 34. Maybe it's 28. I can't remember now. I shouldn't have said the numbers. It's been a while since I've read the site report of Cahokia. But you find this metal foundry, and evidence of anvils and things like that. So it's a really big and very, very cool city that is, again, it's the biggest one in the region, and it's going to be the biggest one that exists. Ad quote. Maybe I should build that. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't. I think it might get abused. It would be for all of the times where I said, don't quote me on that. And people would be like, okay, quote. Yeah. Anyway, Cahokia is a big deal. It's a big city, one of the biggest cities in the world, and definitely the biggest city in the non-Mesoamerican part of North America. And its height and power would not be equaled for hundreds of years until the European period. So, what happened, we'll talk about that later on when we talk about what was actually happening when the Europeans showed up, which is sort of like next time around for our Native American stuff. But what we can talk about is the sort of common culture of the Mississippian people. And when we start talking about how far and how much this common cultural stuff started impacting, one of the things we have to look at is the shared aspects of their culture. So we start seeing mound building, and we start seeing mound building pop up all over the place, right? Not just in Cahokia, but all over the United States. And I guess I should have just left on the adventure hat. That's Spartacus. We're not sharing Spartacus right now. Let's put some more hats in, because I'm going to show you some more pictures that I've been to. So other locations that they have mounds are like this guy, which is on the Mississippi River. Well, it's not too far from the Mississippi River. This is a place called the Grand Village of the Natchez. The Natchez Native Americans were one of the few Mississippian cultures that survived until European contact. Spoilers. You can see here my lovely wife standing on top of the Chief's Mound at the Grand Village, just to give you a sense of scale. Here we have Emerald Mound. Lumpy, this is the one that I fell off of. What's up, Junk Collector? So here you see again my wife and our car. Compared to the size of this particular mound, it's enormous. This is the largest one second largest one in the United States. So here's the top of it. You can see the slope over here, and all of this, as far as you can see over to the woods line, is basically just Native American mound. This has a higher surface area than Monk's Mound does, but it's not as tall. This one is about 40 feet tall at its height and is just absolutely huge. So this would have been a place where people got together to hang out, have a meal, and celebrate some common, heritage and stuff like that, or play Chunky. Chunky is a pretty cool game. It's a Native American game. I guess I should have shown pictures of Chunky players. But, what happened to my... Oh, there we go. Basically, the way that you play Chunky is you get a stone that's round, and you've rounded it out so that it's rollable. And you get someone to roll a stone across the ground, and it needs to be flat for this, right? And you throw spears, and based on the trajectory and the speed of the stone, you try to get your spear to land closest to where the stone is going to stop. So it's a pretty cool game, right? It's basically like lawn darts, but a little bit more active, and with spears instead of lawn darts, right? Dancing around the pot to avoid saying it was for ceremonial purposes. No, they had ceremonies up there, but like it wasn't just for like ceremonies. There were trade days where people would get together and have big markets. They would get together and play games with each other. They would get together and have religious ceremonies for sure, but it's not just for ceremonial purposes. But I get the joke there, right? I can't wait for future historians to try to describe our sports. So the difference here is that we've actually got some firsthand accounts of people watching them play this. So we have a pretty decent idea of how it actually would have gone, and we can compare that to depictions of this game that they drew on things like pots or plates or stuff like that. So we get a pretty solid concept of how the game is actually played. A cross between curling and lawn darts. That's a fairly decent way of saying it, right? You just run your little curling stone down there, and then you throw the lawn darts to see where it's going to stop. I'm with you on that. I dig that. So we get these mounds, and they pop up all over the place. One thing I did want to show you, if I can figure it out. Do I have it on here? I don't have it on here. I should have. I'm working on... Well, poo, I guess I should have loaded it. I'm currently working on an interactive set of GPS coordinates for all of the Native American mounds in North America. It's a lot of them, and I should have loaded it onto this computer so that I could have pulled it up right now and gone, look at all of the mounds, right? But not all of them would have been Mississippian. Some of them would have been like Adena or Hopewell or stuff like that. So some of them would have been woodlands, but, Plaquemine. Anyway, all these different groups. I know this stuff. I really like this stuff. But the mound stuff is definitely there. Physical culture. We start seeing a lot of common design and things like tools. Of course, I just showed you the distribution of chert stuff, and that's going to be a big deal because, we're going to start using the same sorts of tools, and the pottery is going to start looking about the same. But one of the things that's really interesting here is that what sort of ends up synchronizing is their depictions of gods and effigies, and to bring back Lumpy's point here, their ceremonial stuff, their concept of religion and their concept of spirits and stuff like that. And this actually has a name. You can see it here. This is the Southeastern Ceremonial Complex. And it's really big, right? This is a lot of regional impact. And while these particular locations don't have 100% copy-paste sort of religious iconography or effigy or human description, they have a lot of overlap. A lot of overlap. And you're going to start seeing common themes, stuff like birdmen, right? Like men that are dressed up like birds. This is from a place up in Wisconsin called Etowah. This is another one of these worked pieces of copper. Likely started life at Cahokia and then made its way up into the region via trade. But you start seeing like these sort of common themes of the backpacky kind of thing here with the wings, the feathered looking headdress thing that makes you look like a bird. Yeah. So Matt's there. So we start seeing stuff like that. Then you start seeing stuff like this. This is what's called an OG. And it's a symbol that shows up a lot. And it is believed to represent some sort of portal or gateway. Now, to what is a little bit, well... A lot of people are convinced that this is supposed to represent some sort of gateway to the spirit realm or the underworld or the land of the dead. I don't know if it has to be that. I think that a lot of people want it to be that, and because they want it to be that, that's what it is. I don't know if there's necessarily a conclusive amount of proof for that stuff, but, Anyway, it's called an OG, and you see this stuff all over the place. And again, this is made out of copper, which quite likely would have come from... it's Stargate, right? This is the original Stargate. I mean, it could be an eye. Yeah, I can see that too. It could just be a really cool design. You know, I think sometimes we try really, really hard to read into things. But anyway, it's a cool stuff. And you start seeing these symbols pop up at all of these different locations. So obviously the trade that they're having is important enough to these people that it's not just moving goods, it's also moving ideas. And that's a common theme that we see in the world history when we start looking at stuff, right? When people interact with each other, they're not just moving the stuff, they're moving their stories, and they're moving their myths, and they're moving their ideas. And it makes sense for this to happen. This is the same sort of thing that happened if you look at the Silk Road. When we linked all these cultures together via the Silk Road, you start seeing religious ideology that would typically be Middle Eastern popping up in China. And you start seeing, you know, religions that started in India moving into Central Asia and then further into China. And you get this mix of cultures and ideology that comes from the fact that people are running into each other all the time. And why I emphasize this a lot is to sort of very subtly, but I guess here because I'm calling it out, rather directly combat this idea that Native Americans in North America had no culture prior to Europeans arriving. That's absolute garbage. There were thriving systems of trade, there were individual ideologies, but there was also shared and communal concepts of things. There were networks of connections that went back hundreds of years by the time that the Europeans showed up. There were centers of habitation that had been permanent habitations for centuries by the time that the Europeans showed up. And a lot of people say, oh, well, yeah, you know, there was civilization, but it was only down in Mexico. It was only in Peru, the Aztec and the Inca. That's really all that there was. No, there's a lot of stuff going on in North America, right? So, just to say, what's up, Uncle Bill? Good to see you. If I were trying hard to read into it, I would say Saturn with rings. What's up, Aloha Frank? What's up? Good timing. Of course I appear for the Stargate hype. You know, we were just waiting for you to show up. We're waiting for the symbols to align, right? It's good to see you, Uncle Bill. Hope you're doing well. Hope everybody's doing well. So another thing that we start seeing, and this is going to be sort of right up Viper's alley here, when we start seeing a lot of these cities pop up and this trade network go up, one of the things that is going to accommodate this more globalist approach is an expansion of social stratification. We're going to start seeing social classes pop up more and more frequently, and we're going to be able to tell this mostly through looking at burial practices. We're going to start seeing people that would be considered upper class, people that would be considered artisan class, and people that would be lower class, so workers, farmers, etc. And you're going to start being able to recognize this distribution of surplus wealth via, again, mostly burial customs. When you see people buried with a giant chunk of luxury items, those are probably going to be people that were in ruling classes, perhaps priestly classes or kingly classes. We do start seeing some kings show up around this time. They don't actually use the word king, but we would, for all intents and purposes, call them king. But then you see artisans that would have been buried with beautiful pieces of work that they likely made as well. So it's sort of all moving in the same kind of group, right? But Mississippian culture is not the only thing going on. It's a big thing and it's a very cool thing, but it's not it, right? It's not all. We also have the big cultural complexes that are out here in the Southwest. And this is going to be primarily the Pueblo 3 period complex. Aw, we're getting a bot. It's actually been a while since a bot has shown up here, so I feel like maybe I'm getting back on track. People are like, "Hey, this guy is worth spamming." Hold up! I was informed that they all lived in equality with each other and in perfect harmony with nature. Yeah, junk collector. It's not the case, my friend. That is not the case. That is, to a certain extent, an Enlightenment creation of something called the noble savage. And it didn't really exist. It's a fun idea, though. A lot of that comes from the need of people in the Enlightenment to criticize their own governments, and in a way to criticize their own governments, they create this sort of anti-straw man of the noble savage, this idea that everybody lives in equality and there's perfect harmony and stuff like that, whereas in Europe there was a lot of social inequality and monetary inequality and political inequality. And they go, well, those people must have it right because they live in peace, and look at us with all of our civilization and we're just doing it wrong, so we should be more like them. Right? Whatever, Aldous Huxley. I am bot worthy. You tried to ban it out of habit. I hear you. KP was on the spot with the ban hammer. KP likes the ban hammer. After a while, it sort of wears off, but I've been very lucky that we don't have a lot of trolls that show up, and the trolls that do show up usually get defused pretty quickly, and then they will scuttle back off to, I guess, lurk under a bridge in someone else's stream. So I don't know. Banning is one of the few joys I get in life. Cave, you are such not a troll. I appreciate the good-natured ribbing and the forced attempts at taking the things that I say out of context. They go back to the depths of Moria. Right, JMR. That's where cave trolls belong, right? Challenge accepted. Oh, man. Good times, right? Good times. So, what's going on out here? I guess I should change the header from Mississippian culture to Pueblo. Now, again, we are in a specific Pueblo period. It's not just the Pueblo period. There are different stages of the Pueblo period. We are in the Pueblo 3 period, which I guess I could put, but it would just look weird if I just put Pueblo 3 culture. You should know in your heads, though, that we're discussing here the Pueblo 3 period. And this is the golden age of the Pueblo, or the height of the Pueblo culture. And this is going to be centered around... it was the least popular of the sequels. Actually, if we're doing this purely by head count, this would be the most popular of the series. Pueblo 1 would have been something like a straight to VHS movie from the 80s that came out 4 to 5 years into the 90s because there wasn't enough of a demand, and then it made a little bit of a splash, and it got enough momentum for them to make a very low budget made for TV movie in the 90s, the late 90s on Sci-Fi Channel. And that turned into a cult classic that then attracted actual movie stars for an actual cinematic release of Pueblo 3. That's what Pueblo 3 would have been. For the true fans, right? People rented a lot in blockbusters. Yeah, exactly. None of that retconning stuff and making a whole bunch of the expanded Pueblo canon irrelevant anymore. Only the first Pueblo movie counts. The third one, though, is pretty cool. Pueblo NATO. That's great. Noger, that's... That was good. Also, hey, Noger, what's up? This time with sharks. Yes, in the middle of the Rocky Mountains and in the Arizona and New Mexico desert, suddenly sharks. Snakes in a Pueblo, also a great title. Oh, man. Return of the Pueblo. Yeah. Okay. Let me try to contain myself. You all are amazing. I love you. The Pueblo culture is going to be centered around three big locations. And in order of size, it's going to be a region called Mesa Verde, which is in modern day Colorado, a region called Chaco Canyon, which is in modern day New Mexico, and a region that is the Shanto Plateau, which is in modern day Arizona. The reason I don't call this particular region in Arizona by its current name is because it's very misleading. Mostly because of early 1900s weirdery. The location that comprises Shanto Canyon is referred to as the Navajo National Monument, which it's not Navajo, it's Pueblo, but we name things badly and then they stick. So I don't really like referring to it as the Navajo National Monument because it's not. I mean, that area is also later on going to be part of the Navajo Nation and the Navajo region, but it's a national park to take care of the locations that were Pueblo, which is sort of weird, and it's United States government mess up stuff, right? Pueblo Escobar. Okay. All right. So these big places. Now, how are these organized? We're in the Southwest, so we're not going to have the same sort of big, sprawling metropolitan complexes like we would have in the eastern Mississippi River Basin. What we're going to have are large, centralized dwelling places that house multiple families, but they're going to basically be the hub of sort of satellite villages as well. So if we look at one of these places, let me get to this guy. So I don't get to wear the adventure hat here, but I am about to show you some photos that my wife took when she spent some time in Colorado not too long ago last year. So she went to Mesa Verde and several of the other Native American sites around there, and I'm ultimately jealous of her. I offered to let her come on stream and talk about these places and wear the adventure hat while she did, but she declined to do so. So this is like adventure hat for my wife. I will not wear the adventure hat and usurp her glory, but these are her pictures. Some of the places in Mesa Verde that we could look at that are sort of centralized locations of habitation are things like this. This is a very big dwelling place that's called the Cliff Palace in modern parlance. This is a really, really big example of what the Pueblo III period central location would have looked like. Oh, Moose has been there. Excellent. Did you have a good time? Did you get to go walk around in it? So you can go out there today to Mesa Verde, and you can walk around this stuff, but it is by guided tour only, and you have to reserve tickets. Now, the tickets are sometimes free, other times not, but they sell out fairly quickly, and they get taken up fairly quickly. So if you want to go see the Cliff Palace, you can't reserve it really far ahead of time. I think there's a 48-hour, maybe a 72-hour window where you can reserve a spot ahead of time. But basically, you have to schedule a time to go out to see it. Walked around it for a while back in the 70s when you were young. Okay, so back then you could have literally just like walked right out to it. Oh, it's 2 weeks out. Okay. But anyway, it's a really cool place, and you can go walk around in and among these places. But this is a good example of what we would call a centralized location. And this particular area probably only had between 150 or maybe 200 permanent residents, but with the number of buildings in it, it could house over 600. Now, why didn't 600 people live specifically in this location? Well, the biggest answer is natural resources. In the Southwest, water is at a premium, right? Here's another one. This is a region that's called the Spruce House, or Spruce Tree House, sorry. So they weren't nomadic, but you had these big locations that were in one spot, and then around them you would have smaller villages or maybe even smaller households where you might have 10, maybe 20 people living, and they would be connected to one of these larger centers of habitation for things like mutual defense or mutual work. So if there were some bad guys showing up, something here like the Spruce Tree House would have been able to house about 300 something people, but they probably only had about 75 people to maybe 100 people living there at any given point. But if they needed to band together, the smaller little satellite locations would all sort of move towards these regions here for centralized defense. Here's another one. You can kind of look down into this one. But you can see, anyway, all of these again are in Mesa Verde. We will kind of come back to some of this in just a second when we talk about them a little bit more in depth. But this lack of water and this lack of food are going to be the main driving forces behind an abundance of population. It's really hard to support people in this area, specifically during the dry periods of the year. Now, you would see these little places pop up around springs, or you would see actually quite a bit of, hydroengineering, where people would carve out catch basins or pathways for the water to drain into so that they could support more life in the region, and also so that they could irrigate fields. They did do a fair amount of agriculture here, specifically growing things like corn and gourds, but they also did a fair amount of domestication, and specifically they domesticated turkeys. And in all of these bigger locations, you would find regions of the settlement that were basically turkey enclosures that you would use to sort of pin up your turkeys for various uses. And of course, they would use all of the parts of the turkey. They would use feathers and bones and stuff like that. And then, of course, there's meat and eggs and things that you could use for food. So they had a fairly decent attempt at making a go in some of these very, very arid places. But this is what's holding them back from reaching the same levels of population that you might see in somewhere like the Mississippi River Basin, where the land is much more fertile and water isn't an issue, right? Water is necessary for civilization. You've got to have it. You just can't do it without it, right? So while you're not going to see 40,000 people of a city, you're still going to get to see some of these places that have fairly high populations that might get a little bit bigger. But this doesn't mean that these people aren't skilled at what they do. They're very, very clever. If we look at some of their cities, this is inside of one of the cities that my wife got to go walk around in. She did get to go to this particular location, but you can see here an excellent use of space, right? Do we have an idea how they look in their prime days? Did they do buildings that were in color and decoration? We do have some of that, and you can see some of that here. Like if we look at this wall right here, you can tell that this wall was at one time plastered with red. This isn't decoration. This is likely soot from a fire. But you can see some of this stuff right here. On their pottery, they did do some fairly basic decorations, and I've got some photos. I got a photo that's got a really wide variety of pottery in it that I'll show you in a little bit. But when we come to stuff like painting, it's not a common thing, but it's not uncommon either. So if we're looking at their city right here, they would not have painted every single one of these walls, right? They would have shored up all of these walls and built them the right way and plastered the stuff open and stuff like that. But only the occasional room gets what we would call painted or plastered with a colored plaster or something like that. That's a great question, though. But this particular location here, you can see again that they're sort of maximizing their use of space, and they're doing a lot of this with what they have. Obviously, here in the Southwest, there's not an overabundance of wood, so you see this used very sparingly. These posts, by the way, are original to the dwelling, so they are, about 1,000 years old, or getting pretty close to 1,000 years old. But you can see limited use of wood, but a maximum use of space. So I like this shot right here because you can see how they built this literally right up into the side and the roof of the cliff, right? And they plaster around the edges, build their stonework as close as they can, and they don't waste space on stairs. You don't see a lot of stairs because stairwells take up space, right? They would have used ladders extensively. Things last forever out there where it's that dry. Exactly, Junk. Exactly. They just dry out and they just sort of stay that way and kind of naturally petrify. So you also don't see really, really big windows and doors. This is a T-shaped window right here that's fairly common architecturally speaking. You see this a lot, but you don't see really big open doors that would have been less architecturally sound. But it's also fairly interesting to note that these people were very small. We do have quite a few of their remains that have been found at these locations, and they're very, very short. The average height for a man was about 5'4". And for a woman, maybe right at 5 foot. So they're very small. And they also didn't live very long. It was very rare for a Pueblo native. I apologize if I cast aspersions indirectly, but average height is moving up because of genetic preference towards higher elevated individuals. We'll just say it that way. So airline seats were designed for these people. Yes. Lumpy, if it makes you feel any better, you have already outlived the vast majority of these people. Because it was very common for women to die in their early 20s. And it was incredibly common for men to die in their late 20s or early 30s. And part of this is because of the rough lifestyle that they went through. A lot of these people had really, really advanced arthritis for people of their age. And this comes a lot, especially on the woman's side, from fetching water, right? A lot of their water sources were in very precarious locations, and women were expected to basically go every day to get water, and this involved them sometimes climbing, dozens of meters or 20s or like a long way up ladders, down into nooks and crannies to fetch water. And one of the things that was very common was for them to use head straps, where they would fill a jar with water and sort of hang it onto their back, and the strap for the jug would come up and they would put it around their forehead. And if you look at the skulls of a lot of the remains of women, they have basically cranial damage where their skulls are literally flattened from lugging all of this stuff around, and the bones in their neck are arthritis and incredibly degenerated for their particular ages. So their lives were really, really tough out here. It wasn't a cakewalk. You're taller than Tom Cruise, you're told. Well, I'm not sure how tall Tom Cruise is. Here is another photo here. This is inside of what's called a kiva. And we've talked about these before on stream when we first started discussing the Southwestern people groups. But again, a kiva is a circular building that was used for civic purposes like meetings, Women were not really super common in these. This was mostly like the men are going to get together and decide something. These were occasionally used for religious purposes, but it was also sort of like just the Masonic Lodge where the guys got together and shot the breeze and discussed all the problems of the day and figured out how they were going to handle things. But you see these in a lot of, basically all of the Pueblo 3 culture settlement sites are going to have a kiva. You can see this one here has this bowl in it. This bowl was actually left here by some of the modern natives. And what's interesting, and this is something that my wife learned and shared with me when she came back, is that the National Parks Service has actually started allowing the descendants of these people to go back into these kiva and perform ceremonies in modern day, which I think is an amazing thing that these people are being able to very literally reclaim their cultural heritage. I think that's just freaking cool, right? So you see stuff like this where modern people have made this bowl and brought it back in for a ceremony and then left it for the next time that they come. Pretty cool stuff, right? Now, we've looked a lot at Mesa Verde because, again, Brittany had all these really great pictures that she sent me and let me share. But what about some of these other places? I've mentioned the other ones. So let's look a little bit at Chaco Canyon, and we'll look specifically here at one of the largest settlements in Chaco Canyon. So again, Chaco Canyon is in New Mexico, and this particular location is interesting for a few reasons, and I'd like to point out a couple of things. So first off, you see that this is sort of arranged with a very straight line right here, and then sort of this arrayed protractor-like arc. Well, it turns out that this particular orientation here is astrologically important because one of the things that the people at Chaco Canyon did when they were building this was align their city here with the astrological events that they're trying to trace. So things like solstices and sunrises on certain times of the day or certain times of the year, etc. You can see here that they've got multiple kivas and several different houses. Inside Chaco Canyon, there are about 10 different large dwellings and then just dozens and dozens of smaller ones. We can look at this thing here. So this particular location is referred to as Chetro Kettle. And kettle is spelled K-E-T-L, not kettle like the thing that you would use to boil water in. This is a carryover of the native terminology. But we see here this big kiva, this gigantic one. This is referred to as the Great Kiva. It's one of the largest ones that we've ever found. And it's, again, here at the Chaco Canyon. So the Chaco Canyon location was not as big overall as Mesa Verde, whereas Mesa Verde, at its height, if you took all of the big settlements and all of the satellite villages and lumped them together, you might get maybe 25,000 people at its height. If you took all of the Chaco Canyon locations and mushed them together and counted them all up, you're probably going to get about 23. So it's a little bit smaller, but the archaeological remains there are, in my opinion, a little bit more interesting, especially because they're not necessarily right up into the cliff, so they're more freestanding, which is going to indicate a few things. For example, they likely had more organized defensive capabilities. One of the biggest things about Mesa Verde and the other cities like Batatkin that's in on Choto Plateau is the defense opportunities that these walled cities are going to give you. If you build yourself into this cliff, you can just go up a ladder and pull the ladder up behind you and nobody's going to be able to get to you. if you're in Chaco Canyon and you're building a freestanding city, you're going to have to be able to defend yourself. And also you start seeing a lot more things like the freestanding city that can be basically civically engineered to align with astrological events. So not as big of a population, but kind of cool stuff. I mean, all of this stuff is amazing, and I'd love to go see any of it, right? I'm not trying to demean any of the other locations, but, you know. My first guess from the picture would be the straight wall facing south, which would mean it's projected to line up with the equinoxes, which would put all the other sides in the cool shade at high noon. Yeah, see, you're already thinking there. It's just good. It doesn't have to be mystic. No, it doesn't. There's just good engineering, right? And that's sort of what I was trying to get at with my comparison between Mesa Verde. You can be cool in the shade up against a wall, but to align your entire city to be cool in the shade and make shade out of it, that's a different level, right? And Junk Collector is, once again, calling for aliens. You know. How about this guy? So if we're going over to Arizona and we're going to look at some of the locations there, this is one of the biggest ones in the Choteau Plateau region. This is Batotkin. You can see here, same sort of dwelling as Mesa Verde. And this is something that Brittany pointed out earlier, and I didn't read it when she said it because I knew that I was going to have this picture. Another one of the things that we see being very, very common in a lot of these Pueblo 3 cultures is them carving stairs out of the side of the mountain and making handholds and footholds just up the sides of the walls, sort of in nature, right? Potemkin Pueblos, are they styrofoam? I don't think so. But these are pretty cool. It's not Potemkin, it's Batotkin. It's like that. So pretty neat. A little bit smaller, and that's true of most of the cliff dwellings in their Arizona region. If we put all of their population together between this and one of the other big locations, oh man, the name is eluding me. It's something Keel, Keel. And the English translation of the word means like broken pottery, and I can't remember the native term for it now. I feel very silly about this because I can't recall this. Anyway, there are other large settlements in the Arizona region that are on the Choteau Plateau. But if you put all of their populations together, it's about 15-ish thousand. So this is the smaller of the three, but pretty cool too, right? Is there any kind of archaeological evidence that would convince you that aliens built any historical structure? I would want to see a very clear and very direct reference to a non-human species coming from the sky and landing on the earth, and then using some sort of mystical / unknown power to construct something. And it would need to be very, very clear that it wasn't a human or it wasn't supposed to be a god. So this thing would need to look unique. It would need to not look like pictures of deities. It would need to not look like a human. And it would need to be basically unimpeachably clear. I don't think that we've been visited by incredibly super advanced aliens. I think that if there is life in the cosmos, and there probably is just because of the law of big numbers, they've either all killed themselves already because they discovered nuclear power and blew themselves up, or they're slime molds, right? I don't think that there's some super advanced culture that has transcended war that is showing up to foreign planets and seeding life and then teaching us how to build stuff. And I think that a lot of people that push those ideas are really, really, really demeaning the ancient people who are still Homo sapiens, even though they don't have the same level of organized, mathematically based computational technology that we do. Ancient people were just as capable of being clever as modern humans. Ancient people had just the same amount of IQ that modern people do. Ancient people had just the same amount of ingenuity and imagination that modern people do. The reason that we are who we are is because they were who they were. And we get a really big head sitting in our air-conditioned offices talking to our people on our Twitch channels in our computer spaces, that somehow the only way those ancient people could have ever built those is if aliens did it. And to me, that is a slap in the face of the ancient people. Those people were really freaking cool. They were just as smart as we were. And if we were told to build something like them, we couldn't do it. And that's one of the reasons why we think they couldn't have done it. And it's not because they were somehow helped by alien sources. It's that they wanted to, and they were driven and motivated, and they had to learn how to do that stuff. Whereas we, when we want to do stuff, we just go pay somebody else to do it, right? Anyway, primitive means first, not worst. 100%. That's a great way of putting it, Cave. The clearest evidence of intelligence in the universe is that it has not contacted us. So Noger is making the argument from silence, literally. Now I'm wondering how many potato Pueblos did not survive the centuries. If it was a Pueblo made out of a potato, I don't think it would have lasted. Even in the Southwest, where things get preserved really well, I don't think it would have made it. They were absolutely survivalists. These people in the ancient world survived in habitats that we would have today no hope of surviving in. If you took the weird-haired guy from Ancient Aliens and you dropped him in the middle of the Amazon rainforest, and he didn't have all of the product that he needed to make his hair stand up that way, he'd be dead in 48 hours, right? He's not capable of doing what these ancient people did, but he knows that when he says aliens, he gets 29 seasons of a show on the Learning Channel and makes millions of dollars. That's what we're after here, people, right? Bit of a chip on my shoulder because of that. I think it's really, really insulting to our ancestors. I really do. It's just absolutely silly to assume that because they didn't make TikTok that they weren't as smart as us. And honestly, I think the fact that they didn't make TikTok might actually make them more intelligent than we are. Anyway, JMR asked earlier about art and decoration, and I told you that I would show you some pottery. So here we see a fairly wide variety of Pueblo time period artwork. And we see a lot of these things here that are going to show up in several different locations. So you do see some animal shapes and things like this. We see here like this horned toad on a plate over here. But you do see these animal shapes both in pottery but also in petroglyphs. And I'm realizing now that I should have asked my wife to send me photographs of petroglyphs. So a petroglyph is where you carve an image into a rock, right? And you would see pictures, especially this goat. Man, this goat right here is super common as a petroglyph. Also this lizard guy. You see lizards a lot. But one of the sort of hallmarks of their artwork and decoration style is the repetition of geometric patterns, right? And this is actually quite a bit harder than it really looks. If you're going to say like this guy right here, right? If we're going to make this mug and we want to make this pattern, to make this pattern work in such a way that you can get it roughly the same size all the way around this mug is not something that you just do on the first try. This actually does take a fairly decent amount of skill And when you get really complicated patterns like this sort of chasing design here, this stuff is tough to do and get to look more or less right. But you see mugs and jars, very, very common. But you also see ladles. These ladles are going to originally be gourds that they cut in half, but you start seeing them show up in clay. And these are going to be very, very common. And if you look at the burial practices of the Pueblo III era, you're very frequently going to find a jar with a ladle on top of it. So, turned upside down so that the cup part of the ladle covers the jar. And the suggestion here is that this may have been filled with water upon burial. You also find jars that are covered with a ladle that are full of things like corn. But ladles and jars like this are very, very, very common in burial practices. And typically they're placed near the head of the body. So, we're trying to feed and water the dead. Of course, this does also imply, or at least give very strong evidence to the concept that they believed in some form of spirit world or afterlife, but this shouldn't particularly be surprising because Native Americans, all the way back, to like the original people that lived in this area, had organized concepts of life after death and spirits and things like that. We've talked about that before on previous streams, especially where we, showed some of that stuff. So, Pueblo III period is really cool. And you can go see a lot of this stuff today. It's still very well preserved. You can also go see a lot of the Mississippian culture stuff. You can go to Emerald Mound, or the Grand Village of the Natives. You can go to Winterville Mounds. You can go to the Kincaid Mounds. You can go to Cahokia. You can see a lot of this stuff. And I do want to take one little pitch, and this is something that has nothing really to do with the material that we're talking about, except for the fact that it also just has everything to do with it. Let me re-impress to my friends that are living in the States, and I know that's a lot of people, that we have history here too, right? I know that a lot of people, myself included, get very excited about going to places that are way older, right? We want to go to see the really, really old stuff. And I'm right there with you. I have really enjoyed my trips abroad to go see stuff, in Jordan or Italy or Greece or Turkey. I love that stuff. But you don't have to fly across the ocean to see ancient culture. It's right here too. You can get in a car and drive. And I think that if more people appreciated that fact, it would actually go a fairly long way towards starting to tear down a lot of the negative stereotypes that exist about Native American cultures, and tear down a lot of the false narratives about what actually happened during European colonization, which are still fairly prevalent in a lot of the history curricula that get taught to elementary students in America, right? A lot of people still get this idea that, Native Americans weren't organized. They didn't have any sort of culture. They didn't have any kind of civilization. They were just sort of waiting here for Jesus to show up with the white people, right? And that's not accurate. And it shouldn't be even considered to be kind of accurate. So go see some stuff. There are Native Americans that lived in every single state of the United States, and you can find something that is 1,000 years old that you can go hang out and check out in the United States. So that's sort of just a push to remind everybody that we have really cool history too. And the more that we talk about it and the more that we visit it, the more that's going to start permeating our culture. And I think that's only going to be better. So that's a bit of a personal soapboxy kind of moment. But I think it was a good one to make. But that is going to wrap up the material that I had planned for our two cultures tonight. So we don't have to rush away, of course. If anybody has any questions about any of this material, you are absolutely welcome to ask. But one of the things that we need to do that I neglected to do last time is that we need to pick, and not even an opinion hat in sight. No. I know, I probably should have put on the opinion hat, but honestly, I don't think that was necessarily much of an opinion. I think that was fairly objective. It was based in a desire that was personally driven and motivated, but I don't think I was really far off into the opinion world there. I think everything that I said is fairly defensible. We could quibble about some of the verbiage that I used, perhaps, but I don't think that was opinion hat worthy, right? I mean, if you wanted to hear my opinion about it, I'd tell you, right? But okay, so last week when we did an opinion, or not an opinion hat, when we did a viewer request stream, I was very tired. We ran very long. We debuted a new hat. We did a lot of stuff. There was a lot of redeems. So I forgot that we needed to pick a new viewer request poll. So we need to do that now. And because the last one was a redemption, we need to vote. So what I need from you all is, yeah, go ahead, Matt. You don't ever have to ask to share anything like that. You can just go ahead. Yes, we do need to pick viewer request stream topics. So we will bring over the number 2 position from last stream, from last time, which was Alexius Komnenos. But what I need from you all are 3 more options. So whatever 3 things you think would be really, really cool to talk about, we'll just pull them out of stream. Ba-dum-bum. You got an ad right in the middle of my sentence, alas. Yeah, so again, I think I mentioned this last stream. Twitch has made it where I can't skip ads anymore. There are no such thing anymore as streams without ads. The only thing that I can do is minimize them as much as possible, which I have done. So if you're not subscribed to my channel, the maximum that I could do for you is cut it down to 30 seconds every hour. And that's as much as I could cut it. And I cut it all the way down and I locked it in. So that's what I'm hoping. Rock Eagle is one such location near to you, just a pile of rocks that looks like a bird shaped from the air. I believe to be a meeting place for the tribe's natural amphitheater. Hey, that's pretty cool, Uncle Bill. I'm not familiar with that location. If you've got a link or something like that, feel free to share that in the Discord. I'd love to check it out. What do we got here? Digital Research Library. Archaeologists in East St. Louis, Illinois, dig to find an ancient civilization that vanished. Did it vanish? I'm skeptical about the word vanish. The largest excavation of a prehistoric site in the country is poised to solve a riddle about Illinois prehistory that's lingered for a century. Where did the Mississippians go? And why? Well, they probably left Cahokia because it was dirty. They didn't have sewers. And removing the waste of that many people living there is probably what made people leave. An enormous dig of a village site in 2011, first inhabited about 1,000 on 78 acres. What St. Louis National Stockyards? Site is providing a lot of data. East St. Louis site was abandoned by indigenous people after 150 years. It's 8 miles west of the region's main group of the Mounds. By 1200 AD, the indigenous people are gone from this site. I guess they're talking about, when they say this site, they mean the East St. Louis village. But people were still at Cahokia at that point by 1200, so they were still at Cahokia for another 150 years after that. Of course, they've got the Birdman. Yeah. I'll have to look at that a little bit later and give it a little bit more attention because I need to be looking at stream right now. But thanks for sharing that, Matt. Asian Americans in early film? Oh, God, Tuna. How do I even do the history of that? I don't know anything about that at all. That sounds like a doctoral dissertation. Irish reunification? That's like in the future. So how do I predict the future? Well, I mean, that's what the new hat is. You say that you missed a hat. You did miss a hat. The new hat is the future hat. And we went with the Marty McFly Back to the Future hat. Asian Americans in early film? I don't know if that's going to be easy to research. If you want that one, I think I'm going to make you spend the points for that one. That sounds horrible to try to study. Would there be enough content in the Phantom Islands? I don't know. Because if I'm just being honest, I don't even know what the Phantom Islands are. Maybe I should. Maybe this is just a giant gap in my history. Oh, okay. So this is stuff like that. Stuff that was on a map and then it's not on a map anymore. I don't think that there's enough history there because I think that the correct answer is people don't make good maps. And I think that's where most of those Phantom Islands went to. That is an interesting concept. I just don't know if there's enough really to go on. Because I don't even know where we would go to study that. I don't think we have a lot of primary source material to pull from. Pierre Marquette. What's up, Lofta? Okay. The history of Marquette basketball. All right, so we've got Anglo-Saxons, Alexios Komnenos, Pierre Marquette. You're trying to expand my knowledge. Tuna, just send me Wikipedia articles. Just be like, hey, read this, and I'll read that. There's a difference between like me reading a Wikipedia article that I could skim probably in 2 minutes, and then me trying to spend hours putting together an hour and a half long to hour and 45 minute long presentation about something. If I need to know about somebody, just send me the link. Irish unification is this year, according to Star Trek: The Next Generation. Interesting. Noger redeemed the future hat. Something Irish for Viper. Okay, I see. So, okay. I see what happened here. Okay, I'm following. I apologize. Let me catch up with the. Good gracious, there's too much going on, and I'm still not caught up with chat. You want to watch a talk that links between the Falkland Island and the Faroes? As in islands that are roughly related to people that might have one time lived in England? I don't know about that. So is Falklands a suggestion or Faroes a suggestion? Have we done Magellan? We have not done Magellan. IBM System 3? I think we're going to go with Magellan. just for sake of ease. Okay, so we're about to do a vote. Here we go. So if you look above you in chat, you can see the stream. And you can see a poll. And that poll is, what should we cover next? And we can cover anything on there, but you get to vote. Everybody gets to vote. You do not have to be a subscriber. You don't even have to be a follower. You don't even have to come back when we do it. Just go vote. If you're thinking like, hey, we should talk about stuff like that because I think that's cool, go vote for it. It puts you under no compulsion to show back up or watch or stay. But we've got 7 votes right now and like 25 people in the room. So like this is like American midterm local election numbers, right? We need more like American national presidential election numbers. There we go. There's some more people voting. Come on, everybody. Go vote. Do your civic duty. Be a part of the adventure stream. Vote for your favorite topic. This is more like a beneficent dictatorship. If I really don't want to cover something because I feel like it would take a lot of time to prepare for, I kind of just nix it. I'll be very honest and say, if I look at something and go, that's going to take me 3 hours to prep, I'm probably not going to do it. I don't do this for a living, but I do appreciate the fact that people do financially and monetarily support me. So I do try to give the illusion of viewer requests. The history of historical epics. You get that a lot. What? Yeah, Tuna is like pretty masterful at, that would be interesting, but I don't want to do that. And Tuna has a lot of pull, so I mean, I like Tuna a lot. He's a good dude. And I am inclined to be polite to him because I like him a lot. But also, it's rough. Anything less than 3 hours of research. Yeah, I mean, if it's even going to be 2.5, that's probably much. Like, if I can't prep something in about 45 minutes to an hour, I get a little sketchy about it. We're being visited by a puppy. Would anybody like some puppy-based content? Right? How about that to make everybody feel better? Right? If you didn't get your idea chosen, how about some puppy content? Now come over here. Hey, come over here. Hey. Hello. It's a puppy. Oh my goodness. It's the big old puppy poo. Hello, Katie Poo. What are you doing? The sugars? Oh, the sugars. Oh, hello. It's a waggle puppy butt. Oh my goodness. You want to scratch your booty? Oh yes. Scratch the booty. Oh, I love the booty scratches. Oh, hello. Did you just wake up from a nap? Oh my goodness. Did you take a big nap? Yes. Oh yes. Oh, it's a puppy. This puppy cam brought to you by Shane, who's apologizing for not wanting to spend all of the time researching your very niche topics. You got to reel Tuna in sometimes. We do have puppy-based emotes. We have both the puppy head pat emote, which is Nixolotl, and I saw Nixolotl pop up and I did not say hello. I'm a horrible person. Hey, Nixolotl. So that designed by Nixolotl, and we also have the Puppy of War emote. How's our stream going? Oh, our stream ended. Our poll ended, and we're going to cover the Anglo-Saxons. I will point out that my wife was the one that suggested Anglo-Saxons, and my wife is remarkably capable of getting her suggestions voted on. I don't know if she's bribed a lot of you to vote with her, or if she just has interests that overlap a lot of yours. So I don't know what it is, but she's really, really good at getting hers picked. So how do I know if I'm Anglo-Saxon? Do you speak Old English? That's a good sign. Do you bury your dead in mounds? Stream topic, real politic, right? Brittany can read a crowd. I'll give you that. Okay, so now we have the future hat, which has been redeemed. All right, so now we are redeeming the future hat. I still don't have an emote. For the future hat. If you have suggestions about what I should do as an emote for the future hat, let me know. I thought about doing just like my goofy face wearing the future hat, or something, akin to the profile pic. Because, I have the profile, like the emote for the opinion hat is me doing the opinion thing like this, right? From the side. So make the emote a flux capacitor. Okay. I dig it. That's a good idea, Kyle. I like that a lot. Yeah, so Lopta, we have lots of hats here. So this is the newest one. It just got debuted. The original hat that started it all was the adventure hat, right? So this is what I'm wearing now. And originally, I would wear this when I talked about somewhere that I had been. But even before that, originally, the purpose was basically to share stories about things that I had seen or stuff that I had done. So you could summon the adventure hat and I would tell a story. But that sort of turned into summon the opinion hat and I'll show you some pictures of this place that I've been and tell you a story. So I now wear the adventure hat when I show pictures of places that I've been during the stream. And then to that, my friend Kilted Preacher gave me this hat because he said that I needed to designate when I was going off on opinionated rants, right? So if I had left teacher mode behind and I was going pure opinion, I needed to designate that somehow so that everybody would know that this was, maybe based on fact, but it was more purely my interpretation of fact and less objective, right? What's up, Ferkster? And we just added this last week. So this is the newest of the hats. And it's the future hat. So the goal is, if you summon the future hat, I try to predict the future. And I do this based on my knowledge of the past and present. So you need a hype hat. Make the emote flux capacitor. I dig that. You like the opinion hat? It's my Peaky Blinders hat, right? You're just trying to think of what would be simple yet recognizable. Kyle, it is a really good idea. I like that a lot. I'm going to have to see how I could do that. What do you mean you want a Pepsi free? If you want a Pepsi, you got to pay for it, right? I think that you're missing a crown, which you would wear when you tell us the rule of how you'd be a benevolent despot. I think that would be more like a something that looks like it would come from one of the warlords from Mad Max, right? Do the exact opinion hat pose, but with the future hat? It's possible. It's possible. But maybe something like to designate future? I don't know. We'll think about it. Will Uncle Joe Biden forgive student loans? He's trying. Anyway, so I've been asked to do something Irish related for Viper's question, and Viper has selected Irish reunification. So I get to give my opinion on the topic of Irish unification, and here's my opinion. I don't think it's going to happen, and I'll tell you why. This is an opinion. This is me trying to predict as much as I can. The reason it's not is because the power players of Northern Irish industry and banking and tech are far too integrated into the existing United Kingdom structure. And I don't think that there's any way that Northern Ireland would be in a position to tease all of those fine connections out in a way that they would then want to reunify with the rest of Ireland. Now, I know that things have changed. I know that Sinn Féin has elected a minister into a position that has never elected a minister into before. I know that they are now at sort of the upper swing of things, but I don't think it ultimately matters. I think that the only way in the future that Ireland would completely reunify is if Ireland joined the UK. And I don't think that's going to happen either. The differences are too great. It doesn't matter, though. The GFA states that it all hinges on a referendum when there is a reasonable reason to believe that it might be successful. They can have a referendum all day long. I don't think it's going to work. I don't see that happening in the future. I see Northern Ireland remaining part of the UK, and I see a lot of people getting very upset because a vote that looked like it was going to be 49-51 or even 50.5, 49.5 ends up being 35-65 for staying in the UK. Because I don't think that there are as many people that want to reunify with Ireland as it appears. I think that the people that do are being very vocal, and I just don't see it happening. But that's my prediction. So there's that. We could make it animated. I would like the idea of having one that is not animated because I would like it to be a channel emote that I could let everybody use while they're in the channel. But I'm sure if it is animated, you can probably pull like a single image out of it. But, would that change if Scotland left the UK? I don't think Scotland's leaving the UK either. I think that there are a lot of people that are interested in leaving the UK and Scotland, and I don't think that they actually know what they're talking about economically speaking. I don't know if Scotland has enough economic power on its own to survive, and I don't think England is going to let them go as easy as Scotland thinks. So there's a little bit of a free prediction for you. I think it's inevitable, just a matter of when, especially now that the UK is in decline and the NHS is being privatized. I mean, it's more likely now than it has been in the past, but I still don't think it's likely. I don't think that it's even necessarily inevitable. I think the UK is going through stuff that is very similar to what's happening in the United States right now and what's happening in a lot of places right now. And that is the last gasp of the previous conservative round of voters are still holding on to power. And when this current group of people get out of the way, there's going to be a massive forward rush towards more liberal policies. And I think that is going to follow the same sort of trajectory that we're in America, and that in the next 6 to 7 years, things are going to change a lot. I don't see that being as like aiming for a referendum by 2030. See, the thing is, by 2030, I think that a lot of the changes are already going to be in motion, and I think that the Conservatives, so the Tories in England and Scotland and Wales and Northern Ireland, basically the Tories that are running the UK Parliament right now, they're toast. And it's very, 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 very clear that they are toast. They know it. Everybody else knows it. There are boroughs and districts in the UK that have not gone Labour for 100 years that are voting Labour right now. And Rishi Sunak and all of the leadership of the Tories know that the next election is their doomsday. And they're going to hold on for as long as possible. I don't know if they'll make it out of this year, but they're going to definitely try to make it into next year when they are required constitutionally to have an election. And they're going to lose big. It's going to be real big. And when Labor gets in charge, they're going to screw everything up for about 3 years, trying to make everybody happy. And then they're going to lose some of their momentum and some of their majority, and they're going to end up having to form coalitions, and that's going to temper them out. And about 5 years from now or so, they're going to start passing policy that's actually designed to fix things, and a lot of the complaints about stuff like the DHS, right, that's going to get addressed. And by the time that it gets to 2030, when Sinn Féin wants to have its referendum, the Northern Irish people are going to be much more happy with still being in the UK. That's just my prediction, though. Another thing that I'm forgetting is that with Northern Ireland being the only region with access to the EU single market, integration with the Irish systems is economic opportunity. Yeah, sure. I mean, that's for sure. But, I mean, you also can't count out the fact that those companies that are going to be participating in this economic opportunity have board members that are British, right? Not Irish. A lot of those big companies in Northern Ireland are run by people that might be Northern Ireland, but they're controlled by people that are British. That's where most of the money comes from. And they're not going to necessarily be super excited about trying to break that bond because it's going to make them lose money. I mean, and you're making logical arguments. And again, you are Northern Irish. I'm not trying to say that you don't have a foothold in here that I'm not recognizing. I just don't think that it's going to happen. So Brexit did lose them a lot of money, for sure. The trade slowdown and the trade collapse cost a lot of people a lot of money. Or the day after tomorrow will happen and the global environment will go wild and most people will die and America will end up in Mexico. That's a fair assessment too, right? As long as Jake Gyllenhaal gets out, right? I mean, I completely appreciate your opinion, and I'm not saying that your opinion is any more valid than mine. If anything, it's more valid than mine. But I was the one to ask to wear the hat, right? So, this is just my assessment, and you are completely welcome. And with love, able to tell me to shove off. Right? Lotta's like, where's my hat? Right? Where's... So there's me. Anybody else want to redeem any points or anything like that? Otherwise, we can start looking for a person to raid. Who are we going to raid? Who are we going to raid? We raided Sown last time. We raided Cave recently. About a month ago, we raided a new streamer, Professor Ashley. And I think we're going to go raid her again. Yeah, you'd be more convincing if you had a cool hat. Viper does have cool hats. I mean, I've seen him in hats. He's been on stream in hats before. So, I mean, he's got a hat collection, right? This is my hat. Professor Ashley is a game developer, but also has a degree in sociology, which got me excited about. She's currently playing a game called Enshrouded, which a lot of people have gone kind of gaga over. But I think we're going to go raid to try to reinforce the friendship that we made a few weeks ago. So we're going to go raid Professor Ashley. Thanks so much, everybody. Appreciate everybody's support and everybody hanging out. And thank you for the subscription, Kyle. It is much appreciated. Everybody's love and all that fun stuff. Matt, thank you for the link. And I'll give that an eyeball. It's also fair to point out that I have patrons. And they don't get recognized in chat with cool little badges. So let me make sure that they get shared here so you can see names of patrons and the link to my Patreon. And you can see people that have given me reading material and the link to the list of books if you are so inclined to give me a book. Please do not feel as if you are expected or required. Your presence is gift enough. And I love you guys. It really does make my day better when I get to hang out with you. But until next time, take it easy. And so when we get to Professor Ashley's chat, everybody should yell adventure and share as many of our cool emotes as possible. And that reminds me, I found a streamer I might like. Masters. Oh, interesting. Viper, could you shoot me that in a message or something? I'm gonna completely forget that because it's my brain. Frank, never apologize for asking alien questions. It's completely fine to ask alien questions, but it is time to go, everybody. And thanks so much for hanging out. Show Professor Ashley some love, and I'll see everybody next time.